Good morning, everybody. Welcome to today's webinar. My name is Rob Cameron. I'm an advisor with Collins SBA, and Collins SBA has been working very closely with the Tasmanian Hospitality Association to provide guidance to hospitality venues to support the industry really in whatever way we can as we try and navigate our way through the COVID-19 shutdown. The shutdown's been particularly brutal for the hospitality industry, but I think equally as daunting is going to be the reopening as business begins to resume to a more normal level. We're really unsure what the world's going to look like, and there's a lot of questions around how much restriction is going to be on hospitality venues, what the customer demands are going to look like, and whether supply arrangements are going to need to change. So myself and my colleagues at Collins SBA, we're not putting ourselves out there as hospitality experts, but through our work with the THA, we've had the privilege to be able to contact literally hundreds of Tassie venue operators and get from them their experiences, what's working, what's not working, their view on the future, and begin to get a sense as to who's shaping up to be more successful as we make our way through this this COVID shutdown versus the ones that are less successful. And in a very general sense, we've noticed there are three broad groups of hospitality venues. The first group is what we're calling the fragile group. So that was the businesses that were struggling before this crisis hit. And the reality is life's only going to get harder and they're going to struggle to survive. Then there's, I guess, the majority of businesses in the middle. They probably had a solid local trade, so they haven't been impacted too heavily by exposure to tourism, but they've certainly been knocked around. I don't think anyone's coming out of this unscathed. And the third group that we're seeing is probably those particularly high-end venues where they're probably quite exposed to the tourist market, and the reality is their market has disappeared for the foreseeable future, or at least a good chunk of their market. So for those businesses, life is going to be very, very difficult as well. The content we're talking about today is primarily focused on that middle group of businesses and what's going to be needed for them to thrive as we move our way through the COVID-19 shutdown. And again, we've made some observations that's given us a point of view as to what's going to work in the hospitality industry as restrictions begin to lift. So today's webinar is, we're going to run for an hour. We're covering, I guess, what we're seeing as the key topics that are going to influence success in the industry right now. And as we go, feel free to use the Q&A section or the chat bar to let me know any questions that are coming up, and I'll do my best to answer them as we work our way through this. I guess the other thing to point out is that the principles we're covering today are going to be equally as applicable for small venues as they are for large. So, don't be put off. I know sometimes I can jump into terminology or acronyms. Don't let that put you off. I think, what you'll find is the principles we're talking about are applicable to almost any size business. So again, if you're unsure or I'm using acronyms that don't make sense, please pull me up, let me know, and I'll do my best to make this as clear as I can for everyone. All right, I'll get the presentation up and we'll start stepping our way through it. So I guess the purpose of this slide is just to say that, you know, we recognise that there is going to be a new normal at the end of this somewhere. We just don't know quite how the road there is going to look and how bumpy it's going to be between here and there. So, so it's going to be an interesting journey ahead of us. And what we're setting up for THA members is, if you think there's some value in what we're going to be talking about today as we go through the webinar, we're going to invite you to join a coaching group, which will give you the opportunity to collaborate with others in the industry to work more deeply on the topics that we're covering today. The coaching approach is going to involve expert presenters. So there's going to be some really valuable insights from some experts on brand, technology, mindset, people management. And again, you know, I think one of the big factors here is that it's going to be in a group format, maximum of 12 other operators, and they're all going to be similar businesses to yourselves. So we're going to group cafes and restaurants, we're grouping pubs and hotels, and we're grouping accommodation. So we're going to try and encourage a lot of collaboration between group members, maximum of 12 in a group. And I think there's going to be a lot of value in that. The other thing we're very big on is that, you know, we've got a strong view that success in business, really any business, but particularly in times like this, is, you know, first of all, you've got to have some sort of plan. I guess where we see people without a clear sense of direction, it's often a recipe for trouble. So we're trying to help people get a plan together. Importantly, there's also a mindset piece to this. If your focus is on problems and issues and woe is me, it's very hard to put enough time and attention into the opportunities, the changes, addressing the issues at hand that you need to give yourself the best chance of success. And, you know, as I touched on, it's very much about action. At the end of the day, you've got to walk away and do something. So we're hoping you will be able to take away some things from this session that will give you some opportunities for taking action straight away. So I'll just run through the topics that we're going to cover them briefly today, and in a lot of detail in the group coaching program. The group coaching program will run over 6 weeks, and it will cover a different topic each week with an expert presenter. And it'll be 2-hour sessions. So it's basically a 6-week commitment. And the first thing we're going to cover is, the first topic is making your business work. So we're very much into having a financial plan that shows how the numbers are going to stack up for your business and what changes are required to make it successful. The second thing we're talking about is customer first thinking. So we've got a particular emphasis on brand and how your business can stand out from the competition. The third area is digital, so technology, and how do we build a roadmap for your business in the future around technology. Leading and managing people has always been a big one, and we want you to walk away with 3 ways to get the best from your team. Thinking into results. This is very much the mindset piece, and it's largely about how to overcome the knowing doing gap. or, we've all got a to-do list. We don't always tackle the important things that are on it, or we know we should be doing something, but we just don't seem to get around to it. How do we get past that? So really good session, that one. And traction, which is how you pull all this together into a plan to go away and take action after the coaching sessions. So that's the 6 areas. And again, today I'll run through these at a high level, and feel free to put up any sort of questions as we go. So the first one I want to talk about is a financial business model. And in very simple terms, it's a set of numbers that represent how your business is going to make money. Now, I've put an example up here of a very simple profit and loss account. And, I'm going to use the example of a cafe. I know the people on the call today are not necessarily cafe operators, but just for the sake of the example, I'll use a cafe. And what I've done here is I've broken the revenue down into the average number of customer transactions that happen in a week and what the average value is of each of those transactions. So in this cafe, there were 1,865 transactions per week, and they just pulled that straight off their point of sale system. And the average value was $8.53, which gave them a revenue each week on average of $15,908. So given that was an average, over the course of a year, their annual revenue or their turnover was $827,000. So that it's a reasonable little cafe that churns along, pumping out coffees and bagels and a couple of cakes and the odd teapot, and they do okay out of the model they've been running. Certainly last year, this numbers were based on, and it wasn't a bad year. Their cost of goods sold, so by the time they bought all the coffee and the bagels and everything like that, would run at 32% of sales, which meant their gross profit after taking off the cost of goods sold was $562,000. Now, obviously, we had to take off the running costs, so there were some employment costs there of $236,000, some other fixed costs, rent, insurance, other bits and pieces, $202,000, which meant at the end of the year, the owner walked away with about $123,000. So not a bad year. He was happy with that performance. That was pretty much what he set out to do, and that's how things worked out for him. The big question is, what happens next? And this is where having a model like this can be really powerful in enabling us to look through some different scenarios. So one quite likely scenario is that customer numbers are going to be down. So we ran the numbers and just had a look at a scenario that if there were 15% less customers, what would the business look like then? So nothing else is changing, just the customers are down 15%. And we've gone from an average weekly number of transactions of 1865 down to 1585 transactions. Now, in this example, we're assuming everyone's spending the same. We've still got the same number of staff. Rent is still the same cost. All of a sudden, instead of taking home $123,000, he's taking home $38,000 at the end of the year. Now, that's a lot of work for not a lot of money, not to mention the risk he's taking on owning a business. So you can see how this starts to get pretty powerful by just looking at some small changes and what the impact is on your business. We made another small change, which was, what if all of those customers spent 5% less than they did last year? So maybe, there's some family members that are no longer in work, so budgets have had to tighten up. Maybe instead of buying a coffee every day, we're going to do it every second day. Overall, there's 5% less that these customers are spending on average. And what we find is that the business pretty quickly moves into a fairly significant loss. So that's really dropped away. So this is where we begin to ask ourselves, what changes do we need to make if we're predicting a different landscape in terms of what our customers are going to be doing? What are the changes we need to make to still have a sustainable business? And in this example, we have to start looking at, do we need to make some changes to the staffing structure? Do we need to go back to our landlord and renegotiate on rent? Do we need to change our product mix so that we're focusing on the more profitable product segments that we're selling? What is it that we need to change so that this business is sustainable going forward? Because, if we are saying there's going to be less customers spending less money, there's no doubt that is going to impact fairly significantly on where we end up. The next thing we're looking at is a cash flow forecasting model, which is really taking that financial model and stretching it out month by month to see how the bank balance is going to be impacted by what's happening. We can also begin to factor in things like fluctuation, summer versus winter, and what impact that has on the bank balance over the course of a year. It's quite easy to have a profitable business that still runs out of cash and hits the wall. So this is the second tool we're recommending people use, which is a cash flow forecasting tool. And together with your business model, this gives you your financial plan for growing your bank balance, which at the end of the day is what this is all about. All right, the next thing I want to talk about is brand and marketing. So branding is about far more than just a logo. And we've used the phrase here, a series of memorable moments that intrigue, surprise, charm, and excite. And in particular, it's about creating a point of difference. It's most likely going to be the most valuable thing you have in your business is your brand. And what I've put up here is a graph of intangible assets as a percentage of, tangible assets as a percentage of business value. Now, this is taken off the US stock market, but the principles are the same. And what this is saying is that tangible assets, i.e., that could be your shop fit out, it could be your coffee machine, it could be furniture, all of those tangible things that you've spent money to purchase obviously have an impact on how valuable your business is. What we're finding is that over time, that stuff is becoming less important, and intangible factors such as, why do people keep coming back to this business? It's largely around your brand, your relationships, whether you've been able to create a strong following of customers. Those sort of things are becoming far more valuable. So really important point. And, as I touched on before, a lot of it is about how are you different? As humans, we're very hardwired to notice what's different. And I guess if I asked you, what what is the first thing you see on this slide, I doubt you're going to say, oh, the black star second from the bottom right. Of course, we're drawn to the red star because it stands out, it's different, it's unique. And it's really important that, as we come out of these restrictions, we give people a good reason to come to our venue. And that all stems from being different. We don't want to look the same as the other venues down the road, or we're really going to be doing nothing to draw people into our business. So if we're going to rebuild revenue and recover our business, branding is really important in hospitality. And I would argue that if you can answer these questions here, you'll go a long way to being able to have a brand that attracts customers. It's not easy, and that's where you need some expert assistance. And what we've got here is, my business is the only blank that blank. So yours is the only, is it a restaurant? Is it a pub? Is it a gaming venue? And it's the only one that does what? What is it that makes your business unique? So if you only take one thing away from today, make it be that. Go away and think about how you can make your business stand out and be unique. It could be something simple, but it's obviously got to be meaningful to your target customers. So during the group coaching, we're going to work through this in a lot more detail. We're going to have a brand expert presenting the session, and hopefully you are going to walk away with some really tangible things that will help you answer this question quite specifically. The next thing I'm going to touch on is technology. And one of the questions is, why is technology becoming so important to hospitality businesses? The first big one that comes up is efficiency. So having a point of sale system that links into your financial system, that links into your customer management system, can save a hell of a lot of time and administration effort. It can make life a lot simpler for your customers as well as your staff. And certainly when it comes time to do all those administration jobs in a business, you can cut out hours and hours by having a good, well-coordinated set of technology applications. The other thing that is becoming more and more important is owning your customer and knowing how to give them the attention they need, which is why I start to talk a bit about data and analytics. So, one of the things we've seen during COVID is the rise of, I'll use the example of Uber Eats. That's fairly topical in the hospitality industry. And the danger with those services is that they are the first point of contact for your customers. And a lot of the data is being collected by those apps as opposed to coming to you as a business owner, which means when it comes time to, you may want to do some basic analysis over your customers and understand, how do we find out where do most of our customers live, or roughly, what time are they looking to make a purchase? It's very difficult unless we've got that data to be able to answer those questions. The other thing is communicating with customers is becoming more and more important. And if you don't have that database of email addresses or phone numbers or however it is that you communicate with your customers, it becomes a lot harder to retain that relationship, particularly if you want to communicate about changes or try and reposition your brand in the market. Having a strong set of customer data that you own and you control is becoming more and more important. So really good one to consider. During the group coaching sessions, we're going to have a look through some of the different applications that are out there now applicable to hospitality, and how to determine what's the right fit for your business. And importantly, how do you make that happen effectively? A big one for hospitality is around having support available at all hours, so that if the internet drops out or power drops out on a server somewhere, you've got a plan B and your business can keep functioning. So really important part of the technology piece. I was looking at a couple of examples. The presenter who's running this session in our group coaching was talking about room ordering process that he developed for a restaurant in Sydney. Now, this restaurant in Sydney was just down the road from a hotel. The hotel didn't have room service. So the restaurant, in looking for opportunities, struck up a deal with the hotel to offer in-room ordering. And, you know, with only a fairly basic set of hospitality applications and partnering with the right technology service provider, they were able to develop a pretty effective solution, which meant they now own all the room service for that hotel, which has opened up a whole new market for them. And if I just briefly bring this up so you can have a look at how it works. And all of these applications are pretty much off the shelf, but you can see that this can be accessed as a default by any of the hotel guests. They can go in there and quite easily order themselves up whatever they'd like to be delivered to their room. So, you know, food and drinks and alcohol, whatever it might happen to be. That order goes through to the restaurant down the road, Freddie Green's, and then they just run it up to the room when it's ready. So you can see from the pricing, you know, they price it quite effectively, but the amount of volume they get through here makes it well worth, I guess, the additional effort of organising deliveries. So this has been an example of a business pivoting during COVID-19 to open up a new market, and it's worked really effectively for them. But technology was the enabler. So getting more and more important to get that technology piece right. All right, the next thing we're touching on here is leading and managing people. So a couple of key things we talk about there. The first one is structure. So who needs to be in your business and in what roles? And this is where it's important. It links in with your business model and your financial plan. How many people do we want? What's the cost of that? And how does that fit with what we're trying to achieve in terms of the number of customers and price point? The second thing is communication rhythm. And where we see businesses executing effectively, communication is a really common point. A couple of points we touch on there is what to communicate, when, who to communicate to, and how to communicate. So we talked about what to communicate, and in the group coaching, we'll talk about a level 10 agenda, which gives a common list of, you know, here's our agenda points for the day, which line up with our business plan. And there's also an area where we can track, well, what are the issues coming up and how do we solve them? So that's another big one there. It's important to think about when to communicate. So that could be, you know, each shift, each day. It could be a weekly meeting, a monthly meeting, or sometimes a quarterly meeting can be appropriate too. And who are you going to have involved in those meetings? The other one, which is becoming more prevalent, is thinking, how do we communicate? It doesn't always have to be face to face. Sometimes bringing people together over a Zoom meeting, perhaps outside of ordinary business hours or something like that, can be an appropriate way to communicate. Sometimes we don't need to pull everyone together to discuss verbally. Perhaps an email is more appropriate, or even a text message. So thinking through how is also important. The other thing we touch on is processes and training. And with training, one of the tools we promote is a skills gap matrix, which is really just a list of your team members, a list of the skills you require for your business, and ticking off when people have developed the appropriate level of skill. And that clearly identifies where the gaps are and where you need to invest in some training or coaching or mentoring, whatever the best way is to lift those skills up so that you've got a common way of delivering service to your clients. The fifth thing we touch on is thinking into results. And as I mentioned earlier, this is very much about the mindset. So the first thing is shifting your mindset to opportunities. So certainly through COVID-19, it's probably an understatement to say business opportunities for most business owners have been fairly scarce. That is beginning to shift. There are new opportunities opening up. It's just a case of switching your mind on to start looking for them. So, how do we start looking at opportunities? And if you're struggling to do that, if you're stuck, how do you get unstuck? How do you free your mind up to focus on opportunities rather than problems? Once you work out what those opportunities do, and you know what you need to do, it comes back to the knowing doing gap. Why aren't I doing those things I know I should be doing to make my business successful? And there's a number of tools and techniques available. And again, we've got an expert presenter on this one that you can take away to help you move towards action rather than being stuck in I know I should do it, but I just don't seem to be able to get around to it, or I keep putting it off, or it really scares me and I'm struggling to take action on it. So if we can get through those three areas, then you're going to have a much better chance of achieving your goals. And at the end of the day, that's really what we're shooting to achieve here. The final thing we're going to be covering in our group coaching sessions is what we call traction, which is basically a way of saying, how do we actually move this business forward? So what's the business plan look like? What's the new business model that is going to actually make a difference to the results of this business? Certainly, we're going to spend some time finalising the cash flow plan. That forecast is a really powerful and important tool, but it's all well and good having a plan. You also need accountability to sit with that plan. So if we talk about, we're going to lift customer numbers by doing some work on our branding, who is responsible for doing that? Is it you as the business owner? Is it one of your staff members? Are you going to share the jobs around? But unless we're clear on who's doing it, it's very unlikely it's going to happen. So working out accountability is a big one. The other key one is monitoring progress. So how do we report on this in a consistent way that tells us whether we're on track or off track? So we want to be tracking our key performance indicators, which could be things such as number of patrons that are coming to our venues, or number of transactions going through the cafe, as well as the financial numbers. So it's not just looking at financials. All right, so that's effectively the 6 areas. And again, you know, what often separates success from failure is the execution. So we're very big on trying to make it as easy as possible for you to take action after you walk away from these sessions. After the coaching, you know, there are, I guess, a number of things we're hoping you're going to come away with. The first is, being a group format, hopefully you're going to build some relationships with other similar business owners. They're, you know, a whole range of business owners dotted around Tasmania. You're going to be sharing ideas on what works and what doesn't work. So, so having that network to tap into will be a really valuable resource that you can have walking away from the coaching sessions. Obviously, I've mentioned we're going to have expert presenters, and in particular, that's going to be on branding, technology, mindset, and people management. So access to that expertise is going to be exceptionally valuable. And there will be additional one-on-one support available if you want to access that. You can send myself or my colleague Mick an email anytime while you're going through the program. So there'll be plenty of help and support to step you through the coaching. Now, what's going to happen from here is that the THA is going to be in contact over the next few days just to get your feedback and offer you a spot in the upcoming group workshops. So as I mentioned, we're going to be doing 1 session a week. The sessions will run for 2 hours and the program will run over 6 weeks. Now, the good news here is that this will be at no cost to you, but you do need to commit if you're going to attend. You know, we're filling up spots really quickly. We've put on more sessions to cater for demand, but really don't want to be in the position where people aren't showing up because they've got this for free. So, you know, it is being paid for. The THA have organised funding for it. So we're really keen for people to take advantage of that. But again, please don't do it unless you're serious about committing. If you do want to find out more before the THA contact you, you're welcome to send myself or Mike an email. We've got our email addresses there up on the screen, or contact the THA directly. They'll be happy to answer any questions you've got on the program. Yeah, certainly we're really keen for you to get a lot of value from this and for it to be successful. So again, if you do have any questions, please don't hesitate. It's a great opportunity. Like I say, it's funded by government via the THA. The THA have done a great job getting this funding together, and it's going to put your business in a very strong position as we start to come to the other end of COVID-19. So look, I'll give it another couple of minutes in case there's any other questions. I've pretty much come to the end of the content today. I did cover over it relatively quickly. I was probably a little more efficient than I was expecting to be this morning. Yeah, again, you know, if anyone does have any questions, feel free to put them through to me, and I'm happy to answer them. Look, I really appreciate your attendance today. I hope you've been able to get something out of that to take away. I know it's been a really tough time for hospitality operators. A lot of challenges completely outside of a business owner's control. but this is where it comes back to the mindset. I guess it's now looking at what you can take advantage of. And I've just picked up a question there from Anne. Will there be wholesale companies in the group session program? And we don't specifically have a group set up for wholesale companies. However, I have had that same question from about 3 or 4 different wholesalers now. So if you're interested in that, I'd encourage you to get in touch, and we may look at opening up a group specifically for suppliers to the industry. Again, the principles will still hold. We will adjust the content a little bit for the different groups. Things like what your financial business model looks like will be a little bit different. So yeah, by all means, let us know if you're interested, and we'll find a spot for you. We'll see if we can make something happen. And thanks for your comment there, Drew. Glad to hear that you're interested, and we hope to see you in one of the groups. Again, I think you'll get a lot of value out of this. I think it's going to be a really good program. So, all right. Look, if there's no more questions, I'll let you get back to your Friday. Again, I really appreciate you taking the time out of your morning to join us. I hope you got something out of it. Again, if you think the content is of interest, really the best way to dive into this is through the group coaching program. So, so please, make sure you take up the offer. And I look forward to seeing as many of you as possible. Thanks again for your time, everyone. Have a great Friday.